Good evening. You're listening to 1001 Nights of Lessons. I'm your host, Dildar, and this is Night 9. For the new listeners, 1001 Nights of Lesson is storytelling and self-development podcast. We learn lessons from the stories we share here, whether it's my stories from the book we read together, or from the guest we invite on the podcast. And I can't wait what kind of lessons we will learn together on this podcast for the year of 2025. And for today's episode, I'm going to share everything I've learned from the book Women Who Run with Wovles, Myths and Stories of Wild Woman Archetype by Clarissa Pinkola Esté. I have thoroughly enjoyed this book. This book is the most spiritual, the most powerful, the most thorough exploration on female intuition through mythological stories. If you want to learn more about what it means to be in tune with your intuition, this book is for you. This is something I do personally. Every time when I read a book, I like to circle all the new words that I don't know. So I picked 10 words that are foreign to me to share with you guys so we can learn some new English words together. That's just a fun, quick segment. But after that, the way that I will share my learnings from the book is to go through my highlights through these chapters. I personally don't think this will be a spoiler by any sense. If you plan to read this book, everyone who's reading this is going to have a different takeaway and interpretation that applies best to their current state of life. The book in total has 16 chapters. Each chapter has a leading mythological story. Author will dive into this story and analyze it for us in a spiritual, profound way, drawing personification, symbolism, and expand on this idea of what it means to be a woman that connects deeply to her intuitive self, intuition, that is, to completely unlock the wild woman as we are. I feel like the author who wrote this book is a 5,000 years old woman. The wisdom oozing out from each analysis of these mythology is so convincing, it completely transformed me as a reader. But before we dive into the book, let's do some catch up. It is January 1st. It is the first day of the year. We have a brand new year ahead of us. So for today's catch up session, I want to do a quick reflection of 2024 with you guys and also talk about goal settings. In 2024, I have moved from LA to Seattle, completely different city, found a new job. The third transformation is that I went through a breakup from my first serious long-term relationship, boyfriend of 3 years, 2 or 3 years. The whole year healing from breakup was not linear. I went back and forth with my ex. I'm proud to say now I'm on a really good trajectory to turn that chapter over, going strong on my no contact. Hopefully in the new year, I will be able to fully close that chapter, fully healed, just move on. Those are big pillars of life: career, where you live, right? And then your relationship. They all changed for me in 2024. So according to my camera roll, I've traveled to Palm Springs, Phoenix, New York City, Rochester, Lake Tahoe, Portland, Las Vegas. Some places I visited alone, especially New York City, Rochester. All the other destinations, I had the best company, all different companies and friends of mine. So grateful for everyone who have traveled with me this year. Another big achievement of 2024 is obviously this podcast. I launched my podcast 1001 Nights of Lessons that you're listening to right now in November, and we are going strong, kicking it off in the new year for the 9th episode. So we still have 1001 night minus 9 nights to go. Okay, buckle in and follow me if you haven't already. That's enough on our mushy gushy look back. What are some ways to set goals for the new year? This is everything I do for goal setting. Take whatever you think is interesting and give it a try. I'll start from the most basic one to the more creative ones. Number 1, you have to really sit down and write down your top 5, maybe 3 to 5 goals for the new year. I can share some of my goals here to be a little vulnerable with you guys. One of the goals, I need your help. My first goal is to grow this podcast, 1001 Nights of Lessons, my passion project, this community with you guys. I want to bring value, positivity with each episode. If in 2025, 1001 Nights of Lesson can show up in your Spotify wrap, any of the episodes show up in Spotify 2025 podcast wrap, in any capacity, I would be over the moon. And you can help me achieve this by following the podcast now and give the podcast a 5-star review if you have been enjoying it so far, and share the podcast to your friends and family. And if you have already done so, thank you so much for helping my dream come true for 2025. My second goal is to travel with my family all around the world. I want to take my mom and my dad to Europe maybe and reunite with my brother and my family. For my third biggest goal, I will dedicate to my health. I want to feel the best I've ever felt in my life, even better than the year of 2018-19 when I was the fittest at that time. I want to go to that point and bypass it and feel even stronger than that through daily movement and healthy eating. I want to feel my best in 2025. Once we have the yearly goal, I do want to stress that it's important to break that goal down to quarterly goals, specify those goals even more quarter by quarter, and then break it down to weekly goals, to daily habits. So that is how I reverse engineer my goal. Now that we have our goals and a life that we want, it's time to get into manifestation methods. So everyone knows about vision board. That is one of the manifestation tools. For me, vision boards are sounding board, cognitive repetition to reinforce in my brain what I might have forget living my day-to-day life. Sometimes we get carried away. We all have bad days, and on those bad days, these vision boards cognitively remind me to stay on track and stay connected to my goals. Another thing you can do that I think is super helpful, that I'm trying for the first time this year with you guys, is film a video to self for your future self. Does that make sense? So you're going to film a video looking back and reflect your entire year of 2024, kind of like I did in the beginning of this podcast. Just reflect on all the key moments, achievements, challenges, and lessons you have learned from the past year, whatever you want to share. Tell your future self your current life status. Where are you? What are you doing? What's on your mind? It will be interesting for your future self in a year or two to look back. I would say in a year to look back. And you can maybe set a couple of goals, talk to your future self of things you want to do for 2025. Remember to set a calendar reminder for yourself to rewatch the video back. You don't have to post it. This is something that could just be in your camera roll for yourself. Everything will just be so clearly on display of what's working and what's not. And you can repeat this process year over year. I think this idea of recording a video to self originated from the book called The Future Me, if I'm not wrong. As I mentioned, I want to do a video to self this year, and I'm choosing to post it on my YouTube channel at Dildar Abdu. I will link it in the show note. Make sure to go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe so you can see this video when it comes out. It will be within the first week of the new year. I'm so excited for you to see real footage of me looking back of my 2024. It will be fun in the vlog style / confessional. So the last goal setting activity you can do is to set an intention for the year. My intention for 2025 is intuitive expansion towards higher self. And then my one word for 2025 is intuition. I would say it's totally influenced by the book that I'm about to review with you guys, Women Who Run with Wovles. So for that, I'm really grateful for our book club, 1001 Nights of Books. That was a great book to kickstart the year. And that is a perfect segue to start reviewing Women Who Run with Wovles, our book club choice in December. Towards the end of this episode, I'm going to announce our January read for the month of January. Make sure to listen or watch till the end of the episode to find out our next book read. Ta-da! Let's get into our book review. Like I mentioned before, we're going to start with sharing 10 new words I have highlighted and learned from this book. This is very exposing of my own vocabulary. It will be a fun game for you to test your vocabulary to see if you know them or not. First word is evanescence. Do you know what that means? The process of fading away describes something temporary, a temporary state of things. Number 2, this one is so hard to pronounce. Pejorative, a negative connotation used to describe someone as being belittled or insulted. Concomitant means something that exists at the same time as the other. Quiescent, a state of dormancy, something is laying dormant. Monotheistic, worship of only one God. Attenuation, do you know this? This means reduction of strength or intensity of something. Tacit, unspoken agreement or assumption. Tacit understanding. Invidious, situation, actions that provoke negative feelings in others. Penchant, strong liking and preference for something. Nascent, something in early stage of development. I'll make sure to list all of these words in the show notes. And now let's get into the book. For the introduction of Women Who Run with Wolves, the author talked about the significance of bones in mythologies and stories, especially female bones in stories symbolize the wild woman, symbolize the women that stand before us, something indestructible. The book is about connecting to our wild woman psyche, connecting to our intuition overall, right? The first question it tackles in introduction is, where can we find the wild woman archetype? And it basically makes a point that we all have wild women within ourselves and specifically in our bones. The wild woman memory is of our absolute, undeniable, and irrevocable kinship with the wild feminine, a relationship which may have become ghosty from neglect, buried by over-domestication, outlawed by the surrounding culture, or no longer understood anymore. We may have forgotten her names. We may not answer when she calls ours. But in our bones, we know her. We yearn towards her. We know she belongs to us and we to her. The sad truth is most of us are detached from our wild woman self. The next highlight I'm going to share will answer the question, when can we know to search for her? The longing for wild woman comes when one happens across someone who has secured this wildish relationship. The longing comes when one realizes one has given scant time to the mystic cookfire or to the dream time, too little time to one's own creative life, one's life work, or one's true loves. I just love that it highlighted whenever you ran into your muse, a woman that inspire you, you just know that she has found herself. Her aura will emanate that energy. So then that make me question, what are the exact signs of disrupted relationship with the wildest force? Listen to this description. If you have felt any of these emotions or state of being at any point, that is a sign that your wild woman psyche is incredibly disrupted, feeling powerless, chronically doubtful, shaky, blocked, unable to follow through, given one's creative life over to others, life sapping choices in mates, work or friendships, suffering to live outside one's own cycles, overprotective of self, inert, uncertain, faltering, inability to pace oneself or set limits. Ooh, that one is like a dart to the target, right to me. Inability to pace oneself and set limits. This one, I have experienced this. Sometimes I commit gluttony by overeating, binge eating. When I'm feeling emotionally unstable, I don't know how to stop, right? When I'm binge watching a show, while I'm procrastinating, I don't know how to stop. In a lot of things, I just don't know the limit because that means I'm disconnected from myself. It just makes sense spiritually now. Chapter 1 is about La Loba, the wolf woman. And one of the highlights is the description of wild women and our connection to the desert. This is something super romantic in a way that I resonated a lot with because my hometown has the second biggest desert from the world, Taklamagan Desert in western part of China. I am Uyghur. That's my ethnicity. That's my people. When I am in presence of mass sand, desert, dunes, I went to Sahara in Morocco. I went to the desert here in the US. I went to the desert in my hometown. Every single time without fail, in presence of vast sand and nothingness, I feel a certain sense of power washing over me. And this is before even I read the book. I had that connection with desert and I know it. And I think that is my intuition telling me, hey, there's something profound here to explore. From time to time, I would crave to go back to that nature, to the desert. I feel really at home, really powerful. In face of nothingness, I was forced to look inward so deeply, like I wasn't able to do anywhere else, if that makes any sense. But all of what I said will make sense after you hear the quote from Women Who Run with Wolves on Deserts. We all begin as a bundle of bones lost somewhere in a desert, a dismantled skeleton that lies under the sand. It is our work to recover the parts. It is a painstaking process, best done when the shadows are just right, for it takes much looking. La Loba, the wolf woman, indicates that we are to look for the indestructible life force, the bones in the desert. The next quote from chapter 1 will teach us the correct attitude to regard the journey of searching for one's wild woman self. The optimal attitude for experiencing the deep unconscious is one of neither too much fascination nor too little, one of not too much awe but neither too much cynicism. Bravery, yes, but not recklessness. This teaches us a very balanced attitude to approach this very incredibly challenging journey. I want to expand on this philosophy of not too much fascination nor too little, on how I applied it to other facets of my life. When I was younger, I was truly troubled and stressed about being successful, especially in high school. That's what I think about and stress about every single day. Okay, that's why I had so much pimples on my face. Even in my early 20s, I was searching for my purpose, traveling around the world, trying to do that. I think magic and sense of peace happened when I let go of the idea of making it. I know I have a destination in mind. I know my goals. First is knowing them. That's a whole other story. But once I know them, also to let go of them. It's just like that quote from the Goop podcast that Oprah Winfrey said, wish for it, want it, and then let it go. This is all the same concept, same realm of things here. You cannot be impatient and too eager in these kind of things. The process is always better. And it applies to everything. It applies to the love that you're longing for. It applies to finding yourself, as referred to here, your success. Believe that you will have it and let it go. And I think this is also one of the golden laws of manifestation. Chapter 2 is about the story of Bluebeard. I won't get into the story of Bluebeard in great details, as I believe most people know what that is. My biggest takeaway from the Bluebeard chapter is the danger of predator, not just the literal physical predatory man that we encounter as women. Also, it extends to our own predatory psyches, the negative thoughts we have. It also shows that how young women are so naive. We need to initiate our intuition in the beginning through these experiences and learn. So how do we identify predators in a sense of actual physical predatory man around us? What are their characteristics and mindset? Let's read a quote on that. Any predators are the exiled one. They maintain a heartless pursuit of lights of others. We can imagine that it hopes that if it could gather enough souls to itself, it could make a blaze of light that would finally light its darkness and repair its loneliness. All creatures must learn that there exist predators. Without this knowing, a woman will be unable to negotiate safely within her own forest without being devoured. To understand the predator is to become a mature animal who is not vulnerable out of naivete, inexperience, or foolishness. Not everyone is nice. A lot of women realize this through crime stories. I went through that phase as well. Being aware of predator is one of the early lessons to anyone who is initiating this process. If you hear my early episodes, Lost in Casablanca episode, and also the traumatic New York City stories where I shared abusive UAE prince dating story, those are all stories with predatory nature that I have experienced. In later chapter, you will see examples of these kind of automatic negative thoughts as predator, and they could sound something like this. You can't do it. You're not good enough. You're not bold enough. You're stupid. You don't have time. You're only good for simple things. You're only allowed to do this much and no more. Give up while you're ahead. Those are what predator psyche sounds like and what predator psyche could feel like. And how do we stop such automatic negative thoughts? Can a negative aspect of psyche be reduced to cinder by being watched and watched? Yes. Indeed, it can. Holding it in consistent consciousness can cause the thing to dehydrate. The sole action of watching your own negative thoughts will let it disintegrate. The next chapter is guided by the story of Vasilisa, the doll in her pocket. This one, I've never read this story before, so it was a very interesting read. Basically, the mythology goes something like the girl Vasilisa, her mother died. Her mother gave her a doll and told her to take care of the doll. She keeps the doll in her pocket. The doll will tell her the answers to questions that she doesn't know. Here, very clearly, the doll is personifying her own intuition. Her father will marry stepmother who were just awful to her, similar to Cinderella, but completely different. And she would venture into the dark forest, find this witch-like lady, Baba Yaga. This lady will put her through tests and challenges, and she was able to connect to her intuition through those tests and challenges, and she will return with fire behind her, like a completely transformed woman. The fire will go on to kill her stepmother and sister. They will all die. Here, the stepmother and sister are personifying her own negative, predatory psyche instead of actual people. In that sense, it's really empowering that she was able to overcome them. The book also discusses how can we initiate our intuition. The first prerequisite is to let go of our old values that do not serve us, old version of ourselves, old stereotypical thinking instilled by culture, society, and family. The second step is to listen to your intuition and follow brand new dictation from your intuitions. So, for example, the parallel in the story is that Vasilisa, after her mother passed, that is a symbol of letting the good mother's old value die. Her listening to the doll, following herself in the deep dark forest, finding the wild woman is chasing her new identity in a way. So this is the quote on that. Vasilisa's initiation begins with learning to let die what must die. This means to let die the values and attitudes within the psyche which no longer sustain her. Especially to be examined are those long-held tenets which make life too safe, which overprotect, which make women walk with a scurry instead of a stride. Regardless of a woman's age, it is the deep intuition that knows what is good for us, knows what we need next, knows with lightning speed if we will just take down its dictation. I come to realization that I have actually let go of a lot of old values as I grow older, and I want to give you some examples of what I have let go. The Uyghur culture, one negative side of it is that everyone cares too much about other people's opinion within the community and would constrain their lives because of it. And my mom is such woman that she always talk about what would other people think and not live out her own truth and not allow us when we are younger to live the way we want to live wildly, freely. And I also let go of the idea of success in my parents' eyes. So for example, my parents always want me to be a doctor, one of those secure jobs, but I played with different purpose in my life and carved out my own career path now, and doing what I'm doing now, podcasting. I'm sure they wouldn't like it, but I let go of it. I'm doing what makes me happy and listening to my intuition. I even have to let go of what they think of sex that they have instilled in me around intimacy and everything. They're always very shameful, have a very negative image towards it, and I had to work through and letting go of shame towards intimacy and sex later on. We should all ask ourselves what values we need to let go or we have let go, and what are the new values that are replacing that. Then your intuition will come out and help you answer those questions organically. This passage regarding the image of witch, how it's demonized in society, it really made me think a lot about what women is subject to in a patriarchal society. Let's get into the quote first and I'll tell you what I think. Like the word vile, the word witch has come to be understood as a pejorative. But long ago, the word witch deriving from wit, meaning wise, given to both old and young woman healers. The witch, the wild nature, the culture finds awful in the psyches of women are the very blessed things which women often need most to retrieve and bring to the surface. A good deal of literature on the subject of women's power states that men are afraid of women's power. I always want to exclaim, so many women themselves are afraid of women's power. Clarissa, the author, is dead on. Men are afraid of women's power. Sometimes we ourselves are afraid to face our own power. Have you noticed words like witch, wild, bitch, see you next Tuesday, crazy? All of these words are exclusively describing women in extremely negative way. And for me, being in tune to my wild woman self, I don't think they are bad words. And I own up to the wild aspect of it. I am not afraid to face the witchiness in me, the wicked witch of the east in me, and the see you next Tuesday in me in a positive way. Who decided that these words need to be bad words? These attributes, these words are describing in women are ugly. Who decided that? We're regaining our power, owning the attribute as something powerful. Next, I want to share something I learned from the book is how to upkeep and maintain that connection with your intuition. There are daily rituals that we should put in place to practice connection with our intuition. For many women, this task of connecting to our wild woman psyche requires that they clear a time each day for contemplation, for a space to live in that is clearly their own, with paper, pens, paints, tools, conversations, time, freedoms that are for this work only. So many liberating creative art form to express ourselves, for us to carve time to contemplate, a form of meditation, a daily ritual dedicated for yourself to connect to your intuition. What happens if we don't have a daily upkeep of this connection? If we don't build a ritual around this, this is the consequence. Sometimes women become confused about soulful work and neglect its architecture till it is taken back by the forest. Gradually, the structures of the psyche are overgrown until they finally are but a hidden archaeologic ruin in the psyche's unconscious. How poetic is that? You will notice the language of the entire book is so poetic that it pulls you in. There's a passage in the book where it specifically talks about what kind of people to be friends with and what kind of people you should not surround yourself in life. Resonated with me a lot, so I'm going to read you that passage. This is something I have thought about myself this year and actually applied to my inner circle, did a little bit deep cleansing of friendship and lovers. When the wildish woman has an idea, the friend or lover will never say, well, I don't know, sounds really dumb, grandiose, unable, expensive, etc. All of this blocking verbiage. A right friend will never say that. They might say instead, I don't know if I understand, but tell me how you see it. Tell me how it will work. There is a positive example of what kind of people we should look to surround ourselves, and I really love this quote. I highlighted the entire passage and I took a picture, sent it to my close dear friends, let them know that I'm so grateful. So let me read it for you. Having a lover friend who regards you as a living, growing creature being, just as much as the tree from the ground or a rose garden out in the side yard. Having a lover and friends who look at you as a true living, breathing entity, one that is human but made of very fine and moist and magical things as well. A lover and friends who support the creature in you. These are the people you are looking for. They will be the friends of your soul for life. Mindful choosing of friends and lovers, not to mention teachers, is critical to remaining conscious, remaining intuitive, remaining in charge of the fiery light that sees and knows. I have nothing more to add to that. I hope you got the message. This is like powerful stuff. Chapter 4, we have the story of Manavi, a man marrying a twin daughters of a farmer by guessing their name with the help of a dog. This whole story is kind of about what kind of mate and lover we should seek for. Right off the bat, the author points out the twin daughters are personification in every woman, the duality of our nature. We are both feminine and masculine. For the longest time, I'm a little lopsided in my dual energy within myself. I'm more of a masculine energy in every single way of my life than my feminine energy. I want to continue ponder on how to maintain that balance of a wild woman. When both sides come together, both sides of you, you will amass tremendous power. Now let's learn about what kind of man should we choose to be our lover or partner. It could be man or woman, right? It applies to both sides. Women often crave a mate who has endurance and the wit to continue trying to understand her deeper nature. When she finds a mate of that substance, she will give lifelong loyalty and love. The key here is man who try to understand her deeper nature, man who try to understand our psyche and build that deep connection. Because we as women, we're so complex, not to say men are not. Men also have their own wildish nature that they are exploring, and when wildish men and women come together, we are unstoppable, right? And it will be a formidable type of love that I have yet to experience. But I would say I have experienced glimpse of this in my last relationship. My previous partner did demonstrate these kind of attribute of deeply understanding me. He could actually, to a point, anticipate what I'm gonna say next because of how well he knows me. Chapter 5 is also about love, union between man and woman, but this chapter, it progressed into something more everlasting and deeper, and almost progressed into a phase where things get difficult between two people, between two souls. Earlier we talked about the beginning phase of choosing a mate, but here the author, through the story of Skeleton Woman, where a fisherman fished out a skeleton woman from the sea and untangled it, and they end up falling in love, and the skeleton woman took out the heart of the fisherman. That was a story. Long story short, one sentence version. There are hidden messages about love that the author deciphered for us. Some I have yet to experience, but let's get into these more difficult chapters of love and what we need to overcome to transcend something temporary, fleeting to forever. The key here in the entire chapter basically is to face that cycle of life, death, life. Let that be okay. Do not fear it. Here, it's not in the literal sense of death. It's letting versions of ourselves within a relationship die over and over again to evolve and change. In the beginning of love, everything is magically beautiful, right? And then we started to learn more about the person that doesn't fit our imagination. It is sometimes very difficult to see all facets of a human being, their pain, their secrets, their insecurities, and still be able to love them. And here it's talking about letting your expectation of this person, fantasy of this person, die and accept them completely as who they are, and then true love will emerge. That power you will unlock is unbelievable when both of you can do that. The desire to force love to live on in its most positive form only is what causes love ultimately to fall over dead and for good. Love costs. It costs bravery. It costs going the distance. When things must die and be replaced by others, if lovers cannot stand these life processes, they cannot love one another over and beyond hormonal aspirations. To love means to stay when every cell says run. I think this fixes commitment issue, right? This is describing a little bit of commitment issue here. What do commitment issues sounds like? Later on in the chapter, we can see specific examples. And these phrases are all too familiar to all of us. All the not readies, all the I need times are understandable, but only for a short while. The truth is that there is never a completely ready. There is never a right time. As with any descent to the unconscious, there comes a time when one simply hopes for the best, pinches one's nose, and jumps into the abyss. What do the opposite side of the spectrum look like? But those who care to love, they strive to light the fire and face the life, nature. They contemplate what they fear, paradoxically respond both with conviction and wonder in the face of what they deeply fear and in the face of what's not so beautiful within each other's and ourselves. Oh, I embellished some towards the end, but I feel like this actually set me up perfectly to reveal the reason of my last breakup. Part of the nuance of the reasons of my last breakup. On the side of my ex, what I can see and understand with the help of this book is that he lacked conviction to dive nose down into the abyss. And quoting the ideology from previous chapter as well, I feel like he was unable to initiate his own wildish man because he still hold on very close to the good mother values that are instilled to him by the culture, by his mother family, in which the cultural value believes that they shouldn't marry someone that is not their own ethnicities and nationalities. So that is truly tragic that he wasn't able to overcome that. But at the same time, as another being, that is not my journey to distort in any way. He is his own wildish man, even though he's still working with that becoming, but that wildish man is still in him, and maybe that is the life he chose. And so yes, I'm finally able to talk about my breakup in this way. I don't know if it's too quoted, I don't know if you guys got it or not, but let's move on. Going back to the commitment issue quotes, that made me realize commitment issue is just a fear of letting go. Actually, there's a really practical exercise you can do, recommended by the book, to practice the muscle of you letting what needs to die. It is good to make a meditative and daily practice of untangling the life, nature over and over again. Some questions to think about to bring this out and practice this are: what must I give more death to today in order to generate more life? Wow. What do I know should die, but I'm hesitant to allow to do so? Ooh. What must die in me in order for me to love? These questions are so deep. What not beauty do I fear in others? Of what use is the power of the not beautiful to me today? What should die today? What should live? What life am I afraid to give birth to? If not now, then when? Hey, these are such good questions. Oh my God, I'm going to do a whole journaling sesh just based on these questions. And if you have the book, these questions are on page 147, by the way. And once you're able to live through the life-death life cycle and accept the not beautiful, this is what will happen. To love means to embrace and at the same time to withstand many, many endings and many, many beginnings, all in the same relationship. Oh, this is so beautiful that I'm gonna cry. Many, many endings, many, many beginnings in the same relationship. How many of us do not pass that test? How many of us give up too early? Granted, sometimes if the person is a predator in a sense, like is toxic, super like and unsavable, that's another story. But like just normal unions of people who give up their relationships on matters that should not disdain a noble love are just far too many. One too many. One description that specifically resonated with me is the effects of pressure coming from your family, your parents have to your psyche. How does it affect the wild woman in you from early on in childhood? And to preface that, I would like to add that I grew up in a very strict childhood. I had immense pressure from my parents to be someone, to be successful. Not that I don't want to be, but it's a lot to bear to other persons' wishes outside of your own aspiration and desire to figure out who you are. It's a lot to carry. So let's read. Pressure to be adequate in whatever manner authority defines it can chase the child away or underground or set her to wander for a long time looking for a place of nourishment and peace. Pause and let me tell you, as soon as I turned 18, I left home. I had this burning desire to go abroad and leave home as far as possible. At the time, I didn't know why. That was me, a form of like listening to what I need at the moment is to go out there. In my discussion with my two best friends who are also international students leaving their home and having a life somewhere else, they had the exact same experiences as well. And they too have both also grown up in this Asian tiger parenting culture. A little bit more on this. When culture narrowly defines what constitutes success or desirable perfection in anything, looks, height, strength, form, acquisitive power, economics, manliness, womanliness, good children, good behavior, religious belief, then corresponding mandates to measure oneself against these criteria are introjected into the psyches of all members of that culture. In my culture, there's toxic projection in all of these aspects. Looks, you have to be pale and thin. Womanliness, you need to serve tea when there's guests in the house and make food and serve your husband. Very outdated. Unfortunately, completely adopted by my mom without question. However, even though she was unable to escape it, she did teach me to escape it. One thing she repeatedly tell me is that you need to be independent, and she instills such strong masculine energy in me to protect myself from this. And that is maybe also why that I'm struggling to have feminine energy in my life. Therapy session, unreal. Thank you guys for being my therapist. Thank you, this book, for letting me critically think about my past like this. But the next interesting point in chapter 10, the author dedicated entire chapter to talk about creativity. She describes the frozen state of creativity in this way that I thought is very interesting. Go ahead, struggle through it. Pick up the pen already and put it to the page. Stop whining. Write. Pick up the brush and be mean to yourself for a change. Paint. Put on the costume, tie the ribbons in your hair, at your waist or on your ankles, and tell the body to take it from there. Dance. Actress, playwright, poet, musician, or any other. Generally just stop talking. Don't say one more word unless you're a singer. Shut yourself in a room with a ceiling or in a clearing under the sky. Do your art. Generally, a thing cannot freeze if it is moving. So move. Keep moving. This is one of the many powerful messages on creativity. If you experience any blocking creativity, that chapter is a really good chapter to dive into, chapter 10. Overall, a recurring message is telling us to embrace change. The unwild want consistency. They want you to be exactly the same today as you were yesterday. They wish you not to change with the days, but to remain as at the beginning of steaming time. Consistency in manner is an impossible sentence for wild woman. For her strength is her adaptation to change, her innovation, her dancing, her howling, her growling, her deep instinctual life, her creative fire. She does not show consistency through uniformity, but rather through her creative life, through her consistent perceptions, quick sightedness, flexibility, and deftness. This is going to be the longest episode that I post to date, but it's worth it. I'm going to end this episode on an incredibly empowering quote, one of my favorite quotes in the book, to encourage you to be different and do not conform. And it's okay to be the odd one out in the society, just like the ugly duckling. Do not cringe and make yourself small if you're called the black sheep, the maverick, the lone wolf. Those with slow seeing say nonconformist is a blight on the society, but it has been proven over the centuries that being different means standing at the edge, means one is practically granted to make an original contribution, a useful, a stunning contribution to her culture. When seeking guidance, don't ever listen to the tiny-hearted. Be kind to them, heap them with blessing, cajole them, but do not follow their advice. If you have ever been called defiant, incorrigible, forward, cunning, insurgent, unruly, rebellious, you are on the right track, my darling. Wild woman is close by. I added the you are on the right track part, but that is it. That is my review of the book. It's just a lot of quote reading and my takeaways. I try to structure it in a way that you can follow and picked quotes specifically that has a message to comment on our female psyche. I don't know about you. I personally feel super connected to my wild woman right at this moment. And I'm excited to try some of these practical exercises mentioned from today's episode from the book. And if you haven't read the book, trust me, that's tip of an iceberg. There's so much more. Let me know what's your favorite quote from today's episode. And on top of that, I have promised you that I'm going to reveal January book's title for our book club 1001 Nights of Books. In continuation of the topic of the book that we just read from Women Who Run with Wealth, I'd like to pivot to another category with you guys together, jumping from a spiritual analysis of old literary work to a real life biography, a memoir, if you will, of a real life wild woman that is my muse, okay? One way, as I mentioned, to connect to your wild woman self, to initiate that process, is to see example of real life wild women around us. And who is wilder than the wild woman herself, Cher? Ah! So please join me in reading Cher's memoir in January for our book club read. I love reading memoirs. I don't know about you guys. If you trust my tasting book already, you should read this one with me, okay? And this is a new book, so it's like exciting and fun, and it's about Cher. Come on, how could you not read it? This is a perfect selection. Are you proud of me? And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to follow 1001 Nights of Lesson wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my personal vlogging lifestyle YouTube channel at Dildar Abdu. I'll link everything in the show notes. Until next Wednesday, bye-bye.